My name is Lachlan McKinion. I'm an associate national security attorney here in Tully Rinckey's DC office, primarily focusing on security clearance actions and appeals, as well as some congressional investigations and federal whistleblower complaints. Today we're going to talk about Guideline F, which covers financial situations. Go to the next slide. Okay, so just before we get started, just a little bit of a disclaimer. The views expressed herein are the authors and not implied endorsement by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the intelligence community, or any other U.S. government agency. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about today. I'll give you a brief overview of Guideline F. We'll talk about some concerns that are raised under Guideline F, as well as how to mitigate those concerns. And then we'll talk about when and how you should report a potential violation of Guideline F. And we'll conclude with some examples to get a real-world situation where you can see how these concerns and mitigating factors play out. So to begin, just a brief overview of Guideline F. So where is Guideline F contained? So Guideline F can be found under Security Executive Agent Directive 4, also called SEAD 4, which is under the National Security Adjudicative Guidelines. Within SEAD 4, it includes a list of 13 guidelines which govern access to national security information. So besides Guideline F, this list includes things such as allegiance to the United States, foreign influence, sexual behavior, criminal conduct, drug involvement, among others. So if there is a concern, for example, involving past drug use, the government may issue you a statement of reasons denying or revoking your security clearance. And for security clearance, remember, security clearances are a privilege. It is not a right. This was made clear by the Supreme Court in a case called Egan. All security clearances flow through the Article 2 executive branch, and there is very limited recourse in an Article 3 court, absent a very limited exception relating to some due process violations. Okay, so when you're applying for a clearance, these guidelines found in C 4 will be listed in your application, and you will provide responses to answers under each guideline. So that's where you can find Guideline F, and you can go in there and read it. You can read the concerns, and you can read the mitigating factors. So let's move on to some concerns under Guideline F that the government may have. So under Guideline F, the government is primarily concerned with your judgment, with your self-control, and with your willingness to abide by rules and regulations. So for instance, let's say you have some bad debt and you're delinquent in your payments. The government's going to be concerned that you have bad judgment and self-control. And this could impact your ability to safeguard classified information. A person who is financially irresponsible may also be irresponsible or unconcerned or negligent in handling and safeguarding classified information. Now, there is another concern under Guideline F, which is the potential for bribery or extortion. So I'll give you a hypothetical. Let's say that you're in $100,000 worth of debt and you're struggling to pay it off, and you hold a clearance. There is the potential for a foreign government or a foreign adversary to offer to pay off your debt in exchange for you providing classified information. And this has happened before. A few years ago, there was an NSA employee who was accused of trying to sell classified information to a foreign government. He had about $240,000 in debt, in credit card debts and student loan debt, and he offered to give up classified information. Now, he thought he was speaking to a foreign government official, It turned out it was an FBI agent. So that situation didn't end up well. So those are some of the concerns that the government's going to have if they see large amounts of debt, delinquent payments, that sort of thing. So that's the concern. So let's move into mitigation. So how do you actually mitigate concerns that the government has? Again, these are found in Seed 4 under Guideline F. So how do you mitigate concerns? Well, there are several mitigating conditions that you could raise in order to persuade the government that you are not a security threat due to your financial issues. For instance, one of the mitigating factors is that the behavior happened so long ago and was infrequent, or it occurred under such circumstances that it's unlikely to recur again. So let's say that you missed a credit card payment, and now you owe $500 to the credit card company, but you're paying it off consistently each month. And let's say that maybe the reason you missed this payment is because you changed banks and your new bank account didn't sync up with your credit card company. You're going to argue that this only happened one time, and these were under circumstances that were unusual, and it's not likely to recur. So that's one way to mitigate a potential Guideline F concern. Another way is that the financial problems were largely beyond your control. So some examples of this would be loss of employment, business turned down, an unexpected medical emergency, a death, a divorce, circumstances that you would not have otherwise suffered, right? You can't account for a death. You can't account for some emergency medical situation that may result in medical debts. You can't, that's beyond your control. And so that is one way that you can mitigate concerns as well. Another factor is that you have received or you are receiving financial counseling. So again, let's say you're in credit card debt, but you're working with a financial advisor to figure out the best way to pay off that debt. Again, another way to mitigate concerns. Last mitigating concern is that you have initiated and you're adhering to a good faith effort to repay any past due creditors. So again, for some reason you're in debt, you've missed a bunch of payments, but let's say that you've come up with a plan to address that debt and you are actively working to pay off that debt. That's another mitigating condition that you can argue mitigates any concerns that the government may have. So those are the mitigating factors, the mitigating conditions. Again, you can go and read those under Seed 4. Okay, so let's move on to some self-reporting. Past cases. Let's do past cases first. We'll look at two cases here. Both are big wins by this firm, National Security Partner Dan Meyer. And these show how financial concerns raised under Guideline F were mitigated down. So the first is it involved an applicant for a clearance who, among other things, was involved in a major car accident. The applicant's child had special needs. The applicant went through a divorce, and the applicant's cohabitant actually stole a bunch of the applicant's money. This resulted in a bunch of past due mortgage payments and 6 credit cards that were placed in collections due to being past due. Because of this debt, the government issued a statement of reasons under Guideline F, denying the applicant's clearance. Now, on appeal, the judge found that the applicant did mitigate the circumstances under Guideline F, namely because the debts were incurred under unusual circumstances and it wasn't likely to recur again, such as the divorce. As we mentioned earlier, divorce is something that can arise being out of your control, as it happened here. That involved also custody litigation, the applicant's car accident, the applicant's medical bills relating to the applicant's special needs daughter. All of this was outside of the applicant's control and her ability to control that. And so the judge found that the applicant also sought financial counseling and was making payments to the creditors. And so based on this, the applicant mitigated concerns under Guideline F. The second case, the applicant had approximately $30,000 in student loan debts, as well as about $2,000 in past medical debt. Again, the judge here found that the applicant mitigated those concerns because the applicant was working towards making those payments on those past due debts and was actively working with a financial advisor to figure out the best way to pay off those debts. So what do these two cases show us? Well, what they show is that you can still mitigate financial conditions, even if it's a large amount of debt, right? If you can show that these circumstances were due to something outside of your control, or if you can show that you are making regular payments on the debt, you can mitigate concerns, right? What you need to do is you need to be proactive. If you have a debt or something else that may raise a financial concern, you need to be proactive in addressing the issues and documenting your efforts to get out of the bad financial situation. With that, let's move on to some self-reporting. So when should you self-report? How do you self-report a potential problem? So under the law, if you hold a security clearance, you are required to report so-called life events. These are big events that could impact your ability to meet security clearance requirements. Some examples of this include bankruptcy, garnishment of wages, having a lien placed on your property, an eviction or foreclosure for failure to pay a mortgage or rent. Right? Those are big life changes, big life events. Right? It's not like you miss one credit card payment and then the next day you pay it off. Right? That's not a big major life event. But other big life events are required to be reported. So whenever there's a big situation that you feel might raise a concern financially, you're going to need to report that. So how do you report? Well, it depends on your status primarily. Right? If you're in the military, you're going to report it to the security officer at your service station. If you're a federal civilian, you're going to report it to the agency security officer. If you're a contractor, you report it to your company's facility security officer, right? Whoever is your point of contact at your agency or your company as you're going through either the process or if you already have the clearance, whoever your point of contact is, that's who you're reporting it to. Now, there's also something called a supplemental submission to your security application. So let's say you're applying, you've already submitted your forms. Now something comes up that you need to self-report. You're going to file something called a supplemental submission. The main purpose of this supplemental submission is to report and clarify potential security concerns. So for instance, let's say you've already submitted your documents and then you file for bankruptcy. Well, you're going to file a supplemental submission raising and reporting the concern of bankruptcy, as well as try to explain or clarify how that financial situation would not impact your ability to access classified information. And so really you want to be ahead of the curve, right? You want to, you don't want the first time that investigators or your agency hears about, for example, the bankruptcy, to be from someone else other than you, right? They're going to think you're hiding something. And so those are, that's when you need to report life events, and that's how you report it. So I think with that, we'll turn it over to any questions that anyone may have.
If there are any questions, please submit them via the chat so we can have Lachlan answer them. Thank you.
Okay, I see one in the chat. Can a Guideline F be set off by excessive gambling when the gambling results in verified wins and not losses? How do you mitigate a problem of winning too much? So it could raise a concern, right? One of the things, if you have a large amount of income that comes in, and there may be questions about how you obtain that income, right? That being gambling, right? If you have never had that much money before, and all of a sudden you win big, and that shows up, that could certainly raise a concern under Guideline F. It also depends on state law as well. So depending on your state, if it allows for gambling or not, that could raise concerns at a state law issue, which could also have impacts federally under Guideline F. So if there's excessive gambling and you're winning, then you should certainly report those winnings to your contact. Okay, well, thank you for everyone who joined. Again, be proactive. Document everything. If something comes up and you're not sure if you should report it or not, give us a call and we can walk you through it. So thanks for everyone for attending.